Hey guys, welcome to the start of another, well, what I hope won't be a too lengthy project, but I'm kind of in uncharted territories here because I've never worked on a set quite like this before. Now, I've already done an initial examination of this set in part 1, where I pulled the chassis and determined that it had never been worked on before. In fact, this set is really pristine. The owner even has the original stand to it. Unfortunately, somebody cut a hole in the back of the set, but otherwise it's all original. Now, it's a 10-inch black and white TV. What's so unusual about it? It doesn't have a flyback. It uses an RF type high voltage generator just like electrostatic sets do. And the horizontal yoke windings are driven directly by a rather unusual circuit with a pair of 7A5 Loctile tubes. So it's going to be an interesting project. Now, I'm a little concerned because it's a rather unique design, and if there are any parts that are bad, I might have some trouble locating them, but let's keep our fingers crossed that everything's okay. Now, there is readily available rider's service info, which I think is a scan of the original OEM manufacturer's info. It's a little hard to read, though, but luckily, when I was going through some recent donations of Sam's PhotoFax, I got the Sam's for the set. So we have some good service info in hand. So what do we want to do first? It may sound crazy given all that I've just said, but I kind of want to plug it in. Now, I have a Suncor PR57, as I've mentioned in many videos, that has a fuse and a circuit breaker, and I can monitor the current, and it's a Variac, so I can control the input voltage to this set, so we can attempt to reform the caps. I do intend to replace them. I've already ordered up replacement parts for most of the stuff in this set. The picture tube I've already tested. It is good. There's a layer of dust on this set. It's, man, I kind of went from some lows to some highs, where I had a few sets that had they were really butchered, and I had to do a lot of work to get them working again, to a few pristine sets where I'm almost afraid to do anything to them because they're like museum quality. But it's not my set. Somebody's paying me to restore this, so that's what I'm going to do. So what I think I want to start out with is partly because of my own interest, and partly to entertain you, and partly to see what we have to work with. I am going to try a controlled power-up. I don't recommend this to everybody. Only do it if you know what you're doing, and you definitely need to have a current limiting device. Dim bulb tester, yeah, but keep in mind that TVs draw a lot more current than radios, so like a 60-watt bulb is not going to cut it. You're going to need like a 250, a 350, a 500-watt bulb. This set draws a lot of current. And a Variac is handy because I can vary the amount of voltage going into the set. I could apply full voltage and just see what happens, but I'll take it a little bit of a step at a time. So the reason I want to do this really, though, is I'm hoping I see some signs of life, so that as I recap it, things improve, rather than going from not knowing anything to hoping things get better. So let's get things set up and see what happens. Never saw this set up close from the front before. It's so weird from what I'm used to working on. So we got a whole bunch of controls. These four are accessible from the front. These are under a hinged panel, and they have the function stamped right into the sheet metal. Boy, this fine tuning looks really weird, and looks like it has some kind of rubber assembly going on that's a little bit cracked, and it's not really turning, so I'll have some fun dealing with that. There's a fine layer of dust on everything. Let's see the yoke. Well, it's convenient it has a plug. Hopefully we won't have to deal with that too much, but if we need to, we can disconnect it. I've already tested the CRT. It is good. The AC interlock is kind of odd in that it plugs into the top of the chassis rather than the back. I've already got a cheater cord going, and in anticipation of trying to power this up. Rectifiers, dual 5Y3s, I believe they are in parallel. Honestly, this set is like, this set was retired and it was never touched. I'm kind of at a loss because I don't think I've ever seen a set quite this untouched before. I feel weird touching it because as I touch it, I'm leaving fingerprints all over the place. But hey, you know, we're gonna restore it, so I gotta just accept that it's gonna get altered. Well, there are the dual 7A5 horizontal output tubes. Let's see, the speaker plugs in here. I should probably hook up something to it. I'll see if I can disconnect it from the cabinet, because it's kind of an oddball connector. I don't really want to run this without the speaker, because it's probably Class A, and I should really have a load on there. Plus I want to hear if I can pick up any sound. So I'll grab the speaker, and we're going to start trying to power this setup and see if we can resurrect it. Okay, I dug out. Alright, I was able to easily remove the speaker from the cabinet, so I have that hooked up. I also installed all the knobs for this set, and here we go. I have my Variac turned down. Let's get this set turned off. Let's see, we're at just about 50 volts. Let's put this into current mode, and nothing, absolutely nothing. All right, so I don't think the set has a fuse, so let's make sure everything is connected. Oh, there we go. There we go. I think the AC interlock was maybe just a little bit dirty. Okay, so we are drawing half an amp. At this low voltage, I can't even see the tube filaments glowing, I don't think. I'm going to reduce the lights. So, at this point, this is good. We don't have a dead short. Actually, the current draw has dropped a little bit, which is fantastic. We're at 0.4 amps now. I am using a PR57. I'm monitoring the current draw here. On the 1.5 amp scale, we are down at 0.4 amps. And the output voltage is around about 50 volts. So, here's the deal. I'm going to slowly increase the voltage into the set while checking the current draw. What I'm hoping will happen is that the electrolytic caps will form up. Eventually I will replace them, but I'm hoping that if I do this over the course of an hour or more, that there's enough juice left in them that they can still function as capacitors and we can get some life out of this set. If at any point that current spikes, I'm going to shut this thing down and we will investigate further. But so far, this is a great first step. Alright, it's been about half an hour and I am up to 90 volts now. Oh, we are starting to get something. That is freaky. You would never see this on a set with a flyback. We have a little bit of deflection in either direction. With a normal set with a flyback, it's either you have something or you don't, because the flyback and the high voltage are interconnected. But right now we have high voltage with no horizontal deflection, which is kind of trippy. And we are at, yeah, just 90 volts. So let's go up a little bit higher. It's gotten brighter. Let's see. I don't really, well, that's right, they're printed on here. Horizontal, vertical, hold, brightness and contrast. Get the brightness down. Burn the CRT, alright. So the brightness control works. Little bit of a crackle out of the speaker. And as far as the current draw goes, let's see, we are at a little over an amp. I'm going to hold it here for a bit, see if it drops, keep that brightness down. I don't want to burn the phosphor. Let's see, right at 1.2 amps. I'm checking the electrolytic cans to see if they're hot. No. Current draw has dropped a little bit, about 1.15. That's what we want to see. If the caps are going to be able to form up at all, and I've been seeing this as I've been going, is that when I increase the line voltage, the current rises to a certain point and it slowly drops away. When I increase the line voltage more, the current draw increases and then slowly drops away a little bit. We're about 1.2 amps right now. So let it sit here for a while, then I'll keep going. I wouldn't expect the set to completely work until I get to a little bit higher, although this is this is a little bit miserable for I'm actually at 100 volts right now. So I'm only going to go up to about 115, so I don't have high hopes that if I go up 15 more volts that we're going to suddenly get a full raster. But hey, that's a great start. Something is going on. And the set is obviously didn't go up in smoke, and we have glow on the CRT, so fantastic. Well, I am now at full line voltage, and things did not improve very much. We have no sound when I rotate. Well, I am now at full line voltage and things didn't change a whole lot. When I rotate the channel clunker, not much changes. We have no sound other than a crackle when I rotate the volume control. Height is maxed out and that's all we get. The width control, when I rotate it, it sounds like a wire wound control. a little bit of a squiggle left to right, but obviously we don't have any horizontal deflection at all. The brightness works, so we know that the high voltage circuit is working. Not too surprising, it's a very simple circuit, just a 6V6 driving a high voltage RF coil. Alright, so it's great that I could power up the set and nothing went up in smoke, but it's a little disappointing in that kind of nothing works. And there's no horizontal deflection. There could be something irreplaceable bad, or very hard to replace bad. So where do we go from here? I'll do the simplest thing first. I'll check all the tubes. It's not impossible that the 785 could be bad or something else could be wrong. Maybe a tube in the tuner. Now I did take a look at a few of the tubes because I was curious if the set was all original. Were all the tubes still original? Some of them do say Westinghouse, like this guy. And it's a pretty cool old font. Let me get some more light here. I've never seen a Westinghouse tube from this vintage with this font. It's not the greatest background. That's pretty cool, I think. And the CRT also has a similar Westinghouse stamp on it. But some of the tubes have been replaced, so it's not like this set had never been touched. I think this is the 6AT6. Looks like a Westinghouse, but maybe a later edition, and it's pretty much been obliterated. What's this guy? Oh, that's also a Westinghouse. Looks like an original. I have to eat what I just said. Although I'm pretty sure I saw a tube somewhere in here that was not a Westinghouse. No, that's a Westinghouse too. Okay, maybe I didn't. Okay, there we go. That's an Emerson tube. Okay, at least one tube is not a Westinghouse. So I'll go through and test all of these. There's a Sylvania 6AG5. It's a stretch, but hey, who knows? Maybe there are one or two or more bad tubes that killed it. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Obviously, at some point, the set worked. It was brand new. At some point, somebody stopped using it. Why did they stop using it? It could be because they got a new set with a bigger picture tube, or it stopped working and they didn't want to invest the money to repair it. We'll never know for sure. But I think one reason a lot of these really early sets are in really good condition is that they were retired early. Now, I've heard some tales that, they were handed down to the kids and they kept using them until they stopped working. But I've seen a lot of sets from 46, 47, 48 that are pretty much all original. It's kind of weird because they would have cost a small fortune, like as much as a car. And you would think that somebody would use it until it, couldn't work anymore. But on the other hand, somebody who could afford it and be an early adopter, maybe they had a lot of disposable income, and they would just, every year buy a new TV, and they would just throw this into the attic or the basement or whatever. I don't know. But it is kind of a curious thing to think about. So I'll check the tubes and we'll go from there. Well, it seems like more and more of these tubes are branded Westinghouse. I've tested a few so far, a couple 6AQ5s, one is borderline, one is good. Started checking the tuner tubes and I found this guy. The shield is, well, apparently soldered to this bracket, so you can't get it out. You have to take that screw out, which is tough to get at because of the curvature of the CRT, so I'm thinking that's probably an original tube that's never been, well, checked or replaced, and I'm not quite sure how to do it without doing some, Well, I'll try to get that screw out and test it. But, well, I'm kind of optimistic that the more original tubes I find, that there's a greater chance that a bunch of them are going to be weak, and replacing them may improve the situation. Man, this is so trippy to see so many Westinghouse branded tubes. They probably weren't made by Westinghouse. They were just rebranded. You can see the tube designators are on top. These are all 6AL5s. But Westinghouse on the side, and the ink they used to brand them Westinghouse rubs off pretty easily, so I'm being very careful. I didn't do that damage. That was already done. And this is pretty common to rebranded tubes. You see this a lot with Philco and other brands. This yellow ink rubs off very easily, but the engraved 7A5, for example, on top is like etched into the glass, and that is pretty well indelible, but this stuff comes off very easily, so be very careful when you're cleaning tubes if you want to retain the rebranded logos, because they you just wipe them even with just water and they come right off. Well, I went through all the tubes, and it turns out all 3 of the 12 AU7s were bad. I replaced them, and we now have some deflection and some reception. It's not great, there's no video, but it is a fantastic start with just replacing a few tubes and nothing else. So, I've also had the set running a few hours, and the current draws stabilized pretty well. So I think if the electrolytics are going to reform, they've done about as good as they're going to do. So I think it's time to take a look at the paper caps. Went through and tested all the tubes, and turns out there's 3 12 AU7s in this. All 3 of them were virtually dead, and those are responsible for the deflection circuits. So, with some new tubes in there, let's see if we actually have some horizontal deflection now, and maybe the vertical's a little bit better. Been taking a look at, ooh, yes we do. Yes we do. Not the brightest. Then again, the CRT is a little on the weak side. The tuner's kind of doing something. Almost some sound. The fine-tuning mechanism on this is kind of, well, it's hard to turn the knob, but it's also kind of an odd setup. Take a look at it. It's a variable capacitor, and it's just formed with this metal plate that is like a cam. So as you rotate this, the amount of metal between those 2 surfaces changes, so it varies the capacitance, but it doesn't rotate very far. turn. So we're off to a great start. I have not replaced anything yet except some tubes.